A few weeks ago in Parshat Chukat, the narrative of the Israelite people advances approximately 38 years. They go from a people who had been free for about a year's time to a people who had been wandering in the desert closer to 40 years. Now, many of us know the journey from Egypt to Israel by foot would take a few weeks, maybe a month, but definitely not 40 years. Somewhere the people who were initially told they were headed to the promised land realized the journey was going to take a long while. We know it turns out to be 40 years, but they don't. They know one day they will get there, just not when. There's more than one reason that this book of the Torah we are in is called Bamidbar, which translates in English to in the wilderness. We, like the Israelites of old, are wandering through our own wildernesses these days. The COVID-19 crisis, the coming to grips with the history of racism that has plagued our nation. And while I do believe one day our wanderings related to each of these will end, I expect the former will occur much sooner than the latter. In the meantime, this wandering can take a toll on us. When it comes to the pandemic, for example, the not knowing when we will go back to a new normal, the not knowing of when we will arrive to the promised land of regular school and indoor dining at restaurants and indoor worshiping at sanctuaries and hugging. This not knowing can be as difficult, if not more, than the actual sacrifices we have made to stay safe and as healthy as possible. What does our Torah teach us about navigating such wildernesses? Well, broadly, it honors the fact that existing in an unending wilderness is hard. It's stressful. It wears on you, and it makes you cranky. Even we might be experiencing that crankiness. And if you've ever wondered why the Israelites are filled with such fetching in the Torah, now you know one of the reasons why. Biblical commentator Aviva Zornberg describes the Israelites traveling on an unmarked route that provides them a kind of academic space to do their thinking. Being in the wilderness, she says, gives them the outrageous freedom to zigzag, not only geographically, but intellectually and emotionally. She says, this is the way it was, and this is the way it is. This week's portion, Pinchas, is illuminating in its own right because the people do more than kvetch. They try to find a way to keep living and keep advancing. They do so by taking a census. And they do so when a group of women, 5 sisters, stand up to Moses and the ultimate power, that being God, and make their case for a change in a law that would allow them as daughters equal rights as sons. And I note they are successful. And they do so by selecting a new leader who is empowered by Moses in this portion. Now, I'm not making this up. All these events that are happening in this week's portion are in some way happening in our very own nation, where a census is underway. Protests for justice are occurring across our land, and primary elections are winding up with a November election less than 5 months away. Yes, despite the unknowns and plenty of mistakes and misturns, our ancestors' trajectory clearly pointed in direction of building a healthy society that they could be proud of, a society that would protect, honor, nurture, and renew them. It was not an easy task for them, and we know, oh boy, do we know how hard it has been and continues to be for us. No doubt I've had my share of feelings that are filled with disheartedness and discouragement. And I have been just plain cranky often about all that has been a part of our modern wilderness experiences. And yes, there have been other moments of being uplifted too. I have experienced many a zig and many a zag, and knowing that in our story, our ancestors struggled through their own wilderness journey makes me feel a bit better, a little bit saner, and a little bit stronger to continue the journey. As we go forward into tonight and tomorrow and all the tomorrows ahead, I pray each of us can find some comfort and strength from our Torah, from our tradition, from each other to help us push ahead. Shabbat Shalom.